Shovel Knight. A widely known platform of its time, and remains to be one of the best video games of all time. One of the more refining details about Shovel Knight is that it includes multiple different story modes, 4 to be exact. For now, let's couple Shovel Knight, Shovel of Hope, as it's the main story that most are going to play first. Without further ado, let's dig into Shovel of Hope. Released in June of 2014, Shovel Knight as a standalone game was meant to be a nod to those retro-style platformers on the NES, such as Castlevania, Mega Man, and DuckTales. There was also a Kickstarter made for its initial release, and several stretch goals after it to encourage others to donate more. But before these stretch goals were made, all we had was the bread and butter Shovel Knight. The story of Shovel Knight is as so. The land has these two amazing adventurers named Shovel Knight and Shield Knight. However, one of their adventures led to Shield Knight disappearing, never to be seen again. Shovel Knight went into a sort of a depression phase? Grieving about his loss, this gave time for the Enchantress to appear and the Order of No Quarter to be assembled. And now Shovel Knight has to go off on an adventure to defeat the Enchantress and her evil order. It's kind of a cliche story, but this is supposed to be a resemblance to those retro games on the NES, so this works perfectly. As for the gameplay, it's actually amazing. Shovel Knight feels so great to play and all of his mechanics are fun and simple to use. And it's so interesting how he uses his main weapon, a shovel, as a multi-purpose tool. He can use it for digging up piles of dirt to get gems, slashing enemies to deal damage, and using the shovel as a pogo stick to bounce off of enemies for extra height. Shovel Knight also has these items called relics, which are these things right here. A lot of them can be useful in certain situations, but you won't be using all of them. The only ones I'll use are the Flare Wand to shoot a projectile in a straight line, the Phase Locket to grant some invincibility, and the Propeller Dagger to jump over large gaps. The War Horn is another good option if you're in a bit of a pickle with a bunch of enemies, but that'll rarely happen. Something to note is that the relics are completely optional. You'll never have to get a single relic, which is good because there are certain achievements that require you to beat the game without using one, or without even having one. Shovel Knight has a wide array of characters. Starting off with the most important one, Shovel Knight. He is the main character, and your playable character for Shovel of Hope. Shovel Knight has a love interest named Shield Knight. Black Knight is the rival of Shovel Knight, and it's the so-called protector of the Enchantress, the villain of the story. Those are the only reoccurring characters, but there are other main characters, which are the Order of No Quarter members. King Knight is a big, greedy king who only cares about himself and his goals. Spectre Knight is the Grim Reaper equivalent, and was one who's assembled the Order. Plague Knight is an explosives expert, boiling up bombs in the form of potions. Treasure Knight is also greedy, even greedier than King Knight. All he cares about is money that he collects. He's also a tax collector. Mole Knight is a busy foreman who digs tunnels in the Lost City in several directions, meant to find treasures. Tinker Knight is a mechanics expert, building machinery in his tower all day. Polar Knight is a kind-hearted but intimidating knight who nurses wounded animals and kills anyone who hurts them. Lastly, Propeller Knight flies across the sky with his fleet of airships and his own propellers. There are a whole bunch of side characters that don't really amount to anything. They're just there to make the adventure more charming and interesting. Probably the most defining thing about Shovel Knight is the difficulty. If you're playing through the game for the first time, you're going to struggle, and your playthrough will be filled with trial and error. Shovel Knight starts his adventure with 4 health circles, each one representing 2 hits. Later in the game, you can increase that to a maximum of 10, equaling 20 hits. Every boss will always have 10 health circles, except the first boss, which has 6. Since Shovel Knight's main form of attack for the first couple of bosses is close range, this makes every attack more risky to perform, since you might take damage as well. But even with relics in hand, you still need to use those wisely so you don't run out of mana quickly, requiring you to strategize every attack. Shovel Knight is also challenging with how Shovel Knight moves, in other words, physics. There's a lot of precise platforming in levels, and when he takes damage, he gets knocked back, which could be the difference between killing the enemy or falling in the pit. Platforming could also include more than just basic jumps and runs. In one of the early stages, there's a section where you have to interact with a magic book to create platforms for a couple of seconds. This section has a bottomless pit and cauldrons of lava that spill every few seconds. Putting that section that requires a lot of focus, timing, and precision in an early stage can make the player lose interest pretty quickly, especially when they aren't inspecting it, such as in the last stage. The last stage has the green propeller guy who flies over to you once he's on screen. He will try to use his propeller to blow you off the stage, which is easily one of the most annoying things, especially for me. This is my least favorite enemy. Rightfully so, they're called hover meanies, and they are very mean. Anyway, the main point is that platforming is a challenge, whether it's expected or not. You have to think ahead if that makes sense. Plan your actions before you perform them, not while you're performing them. There is so much more I could say about Shovel of Hope, but I don't want to spoil the end, the character development, or anything else that might take the experience away when you know what's going to happen. Shovel Knight is and will always be my favorite game to play. I enjoy the mechanics, the story, the gameplay, the art, and especially the music. This game is a gem, and I would easily recommend it to anyone that loves platformers. All in all, I guess you could say that I really dig Shovel Knight. Yeah, never mind. Pretend I didn't say anything.